Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. We had a somewhat disappointing but also good weekend. It's been very rainy across seems like the country even, but very warm as well, humid here in the East Coast. But yeah, we had a 24-hour race, summer solstice, which is one of the biggest 24 hours in the world. That's pretty big. But yeah, unfortunately it was 6 hours in. It was a 6 hours of summer solstice instead of 24.
Yes, so just torrential downpours, so they ended up having to close the course. They were hoping to get it restarted in the morning, but to no avail. It rained all night. Definitely cannot blame them for closing the course. It was basically underwater. The rain was coming down rivers. So hard. I saw a bag. Our friends at Rika who distribute Scratch, they had an actual cardboard box filled with the Scratch sugar powder things, just floating across the parking lot. Actually raised a box of multiple of these things. So I don't know what that would weigh, 10 pounds probably at least. The rivers that had formed were carrying this box down the parking lot. Yeah, so it was pretty wild. I mean, luckily neither of us was doing the 24-hour solo or anything. And actually, it's funny. I think this sort of segues into our topic for the day, which we'll get into in a second. But I felt so bad for the 24-hour people who were doing it solo.
Yeah, it's that would be a goal. Most people don't just walk into a solo. Yeah. Or we had a couple sets of clients, I guess, or one half, but doing tag team as well, which is also perhaps harder in some ways. Again, these are seasonal goals, right? Yeah, and I mean,
just thinking through the tapering process and, the carb loading and right. Just everything that goes into all of the preparation for that, I feel so deeply for those people. But I think that does get to the point that nothing in racing is guaranteed, whether it's, that you have a mechanical or you have a gut thing or the race itself gets called because of weather. So I think it's always kind of important to start with that. And I mean, gosh, we saw a lot of hectic stuff in racing this weekend. If you watched the Mountain Bike World Cup,
also lots of rain, and again, people the best in the world running and sliding and crashing all over. I saw Pidcock.
I was gonna say I just saw a video of Pidcock
and Nino just falling into fences and falling over on their side and what looks like a flat road. I think Pidcock went down several times and then won. But I think it's important to remember, I sent that to a few of the younger athletes, that look at they're falling all over and then just getting back up and carrying on.
100%, yeah. Side note, if anyone who knows the Ineos team is listening, we would like to interview Pidcock's dachshunds on the podcast. Okay. We could get DW interviewing them. Okay. Just putting it out there to the universe, hoping to manifest this.
There may be a lot of requests after this weekend.
Just all dachshund interview.
So whether, there's a certain amount of uncertainty when we're setting goals in sport, if not in life.
Yeah, I mean, actually, for me, even right now, there's a big wildfire going on by Leadville, and right now it's a pretty big question mark whether or not the course will be affected.
Yeah, which could change the amount of climbing, or if you get up to as high an altitude, or are you doing laps in this course now? Yeah, lots of things could happen.
And that kind of changes, is it even Leadville if, you're not doing the original course? Mm-hmm. So that's definitely been kind of sitting in the back of my mind, and obviously nowhere near as to the forefront of oh my gosh, this horrible wildfire is, hurting a lot of people's livelihoods, and people are getting evacuated.
We've seen that with the smoke over the last couple of years, and certainly with the pandemic. Then now you have this more existential, what is the point of sport?
For sure.
That goes on in the back of your head as you're trying to perform at your peak. Yeah, it's very difficult.
We definitely talked about this last summer when we were at Quebec Single Track, and there were the torrential downpours, and we were near towns that were getting evacuated. People were losing their homes, and we're sitting there wondering whether or not there's going to be a bike race the next day.
We're not doing the full stage, and the race is only going to be an hour instead of a few, and then it's there's sort of this overall perspective for sure.
So Just kind of an interesting thing.
So it is, we're into June. We're very quickly, we'll be into July, which means that we are past Q2 or halfway through the year, depending on how you like to slice it. So we thought maybe a bit of a goal setting review, and then also based off of some of these, we could call them random chance or acts of, do you say acts of God? Acts of God, these big natural disasters where your goals might have to be a little different, or your expectations are different than reality, we could say. So thought this episode we would talk around sort of goal setting and expectations.
I love it. Before we get into it, quick shout out to our sponsor, AG1, formerly known as Athletic Greens. Even as we were camping this weekend, I'm always so glad that we have the travel packs of AG1 in the van.
That's right. And these are the ones that fit in the skinny jeans. It was so humid I could not wear skinny jeans on this particular camping trip, which of course I would definitely wear skinny jeans on a camping trip, or any time, I guess, anymore.
Skinny jeans are out. Such a millennial.
So this AG1, we like it. It's got a lot of the good stuff. You got probiotics,
prebiotics, adaptogens, vitamins, minerals, all the stuff you need, none of the stuff you don't.
NSF for sports certified, so that's the stuff you don't.
Yeah, so generally speaking, we think it's just such a good idea to add to your daily routine, especially, what those days you are on the road, or you're maybe going to be, out to dinner, or not getting as many of the normal, nutritious, whole food based meals that you have at home. So it's definitely one of our favorite things for travel and everyday life. And listeners who set up subscriptions can get 5 free travel packs and a year supply of immune supporting vitamin D over at drinkag1.com/MollyH. Again, drinkag1.com/MollyH. Take ownership over your health today. Okay, and that could very well be your mid-season goal, actually, now that I think about it. If you're having a lot of the, immune issues, you're having a lot of colds. And
Sure. No, and I have, I think, 2 athletes right now where, that's been the recommendation with whether it's the doctor, whoever they're working with. Actually, they've had some gut stuff, around races or in training or just in general. And then, it's been that probiotic. And that was one thing when we talked about supplements. That is one of the things they see in athletes is that like immunity or, gut disruption. You can see actually the probiotics be effective with that. Again, not for everyone necessarily, but I guess that could be a goal. Is that what you're saying? A process goal to try a probiotic or go to the doctor?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's actually like a little scary. There's so many tests now. I actually got to get like a little graphic here. I did one of those stool tests a couple of years ago just to like see how my gut was doing, and like frankly my gut was not doing amazingly.
Well, this gets into measuring things and whether you need to know
well, I've always had some gut issues, right. And I was having some like particularly like just like everything was feeling just like a little off. And actually, we worked through it. I worked with a dietitian, and I think we pretty much cleared up all of my issues. So definitely recommend, if you feel like something is off, check into it. I think that actually is a fantastic mid-season goal,
sure.
And definitely one that we're seeing a lot of people dealing with for sure.
Well, and again, your goals may be to do, your outcome, your race goal may be to win this event or do this well in this type of racing or series, but then you're finding, okay, well, what is the limiter to me doing that? And that may indeed be, nerves at the start line, which may also relate to gut stuff, not eating, not fueling. Certainly we see that where, an athlete goes into an event. We had this just over this last month where that we can call it nerves or like medication side effects or something like that. And then they end up not eating before the event. And, it's a lot of things start early too, which isn't completely abnormal, but then like not being able to fuel during the event. And then it's like, well, of course, those are percentages that you're losing because you're not able to fuel, especially these long distance things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or if your race day nerves are sending you to the porta potty just over and over and over again, now you're not getting your warm up. You're maybe late for the start. Mm-hmm. So
then you get into perhaps working with a sports psychologist, or again, this is where sometimes the training can actually be, maybe the training isn't sufficient that you're a little more confident, or you're just so nervous because you haven't been training that like maybe it's sliding off. But I also see, clients where we do things like, I really like 4x8 minutes where it's an off-road time trial on a small loop and you do it from a race start, standing start every single time. And a lot of people find that even without other people or simulating in any other way, just like, oh, okay. Like I've stood still for a couple minutes and then said go in my head and pressed my lap button and went really hard on a mountain bike trail. And I survived 4x8 and, it's sort of like a race day, right? Whereas like if you never go mountain biking, I could see why you would be nervous about going and sending into tree. But it might also be a reason to go to some of our weekly series or a group mountain bike ride even, right? A lot of times we'll take care of some of that social comparison nerves for a lot of people. So again, you can see where you have the race outcome goal. We'll keep that. You want to keep assessing, is this realistic? Can I achieve this? When should I be trying to achieve this? This might be a 2-year goal. And then what are ways that I can step towards that and address some of these limitations? While acknowledge, if you're someone who's got a great engine, we want to maintain that advantage too, but making sure that you're not just riding road all the time in this scenario, right?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I was out on my run doing my workout on Wednesday, and I was sort of playing around with visualization a little bit, and almost not purposefully. It was just really hot, really humid, and I was kind of trying to get out of my head.
Yeah.
Because it was gross. And I just kept picturing, like coming down the finishing straight at like Leadville and, racing someone else to the finish after 100 miles. And I swear to God, I got goosebumps.
Yeah. I was going to say, did you get chills?
I got chills.
That's what happens to me sometimes on my last interval. I'll do that. And then, you just like almost get like chills or goosebumps.
It was incredible. Honestly, I'm like, why don't I do this more? And I think you can only do it so often. Like
burning out on being wired.
Hypothermic. I don't know. But it was the coolest, like weirdest experience because it was 90 degrees and 80% humidity. And here I am, just goosebumps covering me.
Well, and this is when things get hard. And for you, it might get hard getting out the door. It might get hard getting started on intervals, just like actually starting interval 1. You're one of those people who just, I'll just keep riding easy today. I don't feel well to start my intervals. So then it is sometimes where that visualization can be a great thing where, yes, you're, okay, I have this race coming up, but that even more so trying to picture yourself as like, okay, I'm on the start line and they're going to say go soon and everyone's standing around waiting and, and then I go into my interval, right? And you're practicing that. Can be quite effective for sure. And trying to think about those critical moments. I tend to struggle. I always say I'm very good at getting second. But it's those like aggressive last moves where everyone's so tired, everyone's on the limit, and you think you're more on the limit, and then you give up and you don't fight. On the weekend, I actually did get by it right at the no passing sign. Got, that was good. So there you go.
Yep. Peter got in his laps the 24-hour.
Yes, a team from Uxbridge was gracious enough to let me jump in for the first 2, so that was fun. We had a good couple duels there on the start line. But it was good. Like, in some ways, it's just a good practice where, I was like, I wanted to give up and figured out, there's no reason I needed to win. And then I sort of reminded myself that, well, this is where you always give up and just roll in second. Why don't you actually try and win since you're like right here? And it's literally like half, not even 0.5% difference.
Might as well win.
That's right. We can't say that anymore because it's associated with doping, but there you go. So expectation. So what we do see sometimes is this like, I had hoped for better or I wanted better. And so this is, after the race, we're looking at the race and we didn't win. And then it's sort of this idea that like a lot of people, if you watch social media, this is pros, this is anyone, this idea of like, I had hoped for better. But a lot of times the result is actually really good.
That is the
and so
really
it makes us
part.
Frustrated as fans of some of these folks who we love them. We are fans, maybe friends in some cases. And it's just like, this might be the best result you've ever had. And we're super excited for you. And like, I'm sure you want to win and be like Nino or whoever like is always winning the World Cups. But like, not all of us are that yet. And so what it's like celebrating these victories. And it's so cliche, but it's definitely that like, the sort of like your average result. And what do I say to you? I always say like, it was like minimum expectation. So most of my races are like that. And I don't say it in a like bad way, but those are just like my normal races. And there's lots of those that are just like within your average, right? Because if we look at this as a mathematician or maybe like an economist or something, everything regresses to the mean. So like your average performance is your average performance. Right. So most things will cluster around that. And then very seldom we'll have like the breakthrough or the like just where did you got so lucky, the conditions were just perfect for you, and then you win and it's amazing, right? We've seen this in the World Cup where like
you're gonna say Jeff Kabush winning the World Cup in Canada.
Uncle Jeff on this day in August in Bromont, the skies opened. Julian Absalon fell over on the side of the trail because he could not ride muddy Quebec single track. Somehow Jeff could ride, everyone else was running. It was glorious.
Maybe he could have won this past weekend.
Where? Oh, at the World Cup?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure Jeff would have done really well in that. Yep. Yep.
Sorry, I've completely derailed you.
Yeah. So, and then you're going to also have just like days that just don't go well. And that could be, again, the world, you know, the skies are burning or the skies are falling with rain or whatever it is. Or you just have an off day. And there's certainly going to be those two. And we can cry about those and be upset, but I don't think it needs to be like, you know, you move to the next thing, right? I was telling you, I was reading a Roger Federer, I think that's how you say his name, the tennis player. And he talked about in points. So then I only understand tennis so much. But I guess like the individual points. So like you serve and then like back and forth. And then like there's a point. His like ratio of winning those is like 54% or something, which is not that high when you think about it, right? Now he won a lot of games because you can, you know, if you win more of the points, then I guess you win the games. And he was very winning as a tennis player. But his point was that, you know, if he just dwelled on losing half of the points,
46% of them,
right, you could quickly get that spiraled down and just like lose all the time. And you see facts like that all the time, right? Michael Jordan missing shots in basketball or all these things. So I think that's important to remember. We had one other example. It was the Lachlan Morton just won Unbound, which is amazing, and he's very successful. He rode in the Pro Tour, but I don't think he really has won much other than Unbound. Like he's had some great results, many seconds and podiums, and like the big adventures he goes on. But as far as like winning, if that's our benchmark, you know, some of these people that we think is very successful don't actually win that often.
Yeah, well, I think Alexei Vermeulen said it when he came on here a couple of years ago. Like, you win in bike racing, you win so few bike races. Like, you could have an entirely successful, long career and never have won a race.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
There's a lot of cyclists that have never won like anything beyond their local race and are in the world tour, right? Like,
and so it's you'll very quickly see, you know, we get comfortable with our average. You know, what I call minimum expectation, and you do have to be careful that you do celebrate that, like, okay, yeah, I did a good job, like that's, you know, I did it, you know, reasonable, you know, my average, and then you have to challenge that with like, what are you trying to improve? Are you trying to aspire for more, right? And that's that like incremental improvement.
And I think this is where the, you know, after every race, having that not pros and cons list, but definitely like the I've had it framed as like good, better, best, where it's like good is, you know, what went well. So like a couple things that you did well in the race. Better, you know, the things that you could have done better that would have made the race better. And then best is just like, okay, what can you do in order to get to your best? And I love that framework because it's both like acknowledging the good stuff, acknowledging the bad stuff, and making a plan for the next thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think even good performances are going to have, or even your like really good performances, like
I think that's where you find the best like things to improve on.
Right. And there's sometimes obvious things, you know, I brought 2 gloves that were the same hand on, you know, and that happens to everyone. And you know, okay, well I could, you know, from now on I'm going to always put my gloves together. I made that mistake once and you saved me, you ran and got me another set, or another match, I guess. But now I just always, when I'm like folding my laundry and stuff, I don't just jam gloves all randomly at a thing. I make sure that the thumbs are opposed, and like wrap them together. So it's these like little incremental improvements. And that's sometimes why as you become more experienced, especially in the long distance stuff, you just learn all the tricks and the stuff that's going to screw you up, so that you don't have these like really, you know, major errors happening where it like completely derails your day. You know, like the things that are just going to let you cluster around that average and have your good performance, your normal performance, and put you in a position, which I think is the big thing in sport, in life. So much is position. And I really like that, thinking about like you're putting yourself in the position so that then when luck is in your side, you have like an amazing day. But you know that like a lot of stuff is you're on the right side of the course at the right time. You're, you know, the conditions are perfect for you on those days. You know, the other person flats on those days, right? This is all fair game in racing, but sometimes a really good person shows up, you know, and does the local race, and you thought you were going to win, and you don't win because you're not, you know, a world-class racer who showed up.
Looking at you, Ben Perry. Sorry, we really like Ben Perry.
But that, yeah, you're right. Like that just happened here at our local gravel race. Like Ben, who we've known for a lot of years, he's raced on the Pro Tour. He was on Israel Premier Tech and is just super strong, you know, coming off of that type of training. And he came and did our local gravel race.
And like, not only did he win, but that also changes the race
Dynamics
entirely.
of the race, which then, you know, disqualifies some people because, you know, the race just started like a cyclocross race, basically. Like we came out of a sketchy right hand corner and did, you know, I think I hit over 1,000 watts for 5 seconds. And then like it was 600 watts for another like it was just a huge effort to start a 3-hour hilly gravel race. And so you saw some people can absorb that and get into the group. Other people tried to do it and didn't get into the group. But then it just changes that whole dynamic of, you know, let's ease into this perfectly paced endurance race. And some people were smart enough not to go with that and ride their race because that wasn't their race. They weren't riding in the front four. But you see always in races that people will chase with this weird expectation that they're going to hold on to the lead group.
And this gets to the idea of outcome goals, right? Like if your goal was to, you know, win that race, then what are you supposed to do with that when Ben Perry shows up and like again, world tour racer, like
yeah. And so you sort of have to have this sliding scale of what is success, and it might be winning and aspiring for that, but the reality is that like it just aside from someone like Ben, you know, flatting, which can happen. Like I think you need to stay in the race and race your race, but you have to remember that like I really wasn't that bummed.
If Courtney Dauwalter is on the start line at Leadville
Of a running race, yeah.
My expectation, or like my goal of winning the race is it's going to be a little different.
So in endurance stuff, I always think, you know, your goal is to get to the finish line as fast as you can. And that might be jumping onto the back of, you know, the lead group and rolling in there as much as you can. It might be in the chase group. It might be somewhere in the race. But you don't want to make decisions that mean that you have to drop out because you've, you know, run out of energy or, you know, you're just so over your limit, right? So you have to find that. But then that leaves you in a position that if someone crashes and you just keep rolling on your pace, you could easily win, you know, and I've certainly had that in my career where it's, you know, someone blows up unexpectedly or because you don't know what's going on in other people's lives. Even these famous people, like I've beat Jeff Kabush, again, like he's won a World Cup and I've beat Jeff a couple times.
And we will put a link to those results in the show notes.
Right. And it's just like sometimes they're not taking it that serious or sometimes they're not having a great day. Like we all have off days. Sometimes
well, certainly in bike racing, mechanicals happen to the best of them.
You never know, right? And it's like, yeah, they're stuck in this gear and you know, it won't change or they get a flat tire or anything, right? So, and in running, you're, you know, certainly gut stuff or, you know, again, they just have an off day. Like we all have off days. And so all these people are beatable, but you need to always keep in mind, you know, you're trying to get to your best finish on that day. And I think about it more as like the time on the course, right? And you might find you come across the line on that day, you're not winning. You had hoped to win, but you know, it's your best time across there. You had the best sensations. You did your best job of fueling. You know, maybe there's like now we're talking about these grams per hour of carbohydrates. So you nailed your fueling plan. You didn't get lost. You did a great job on navigation. You know, whatever you did with your socks and your feet and you didn't get blisters on your feet again, you know, so all these things that then you're accumulating this experience that in another setting, maybe you do win or whatever. We talked about what's winning for you, right? And winning for you might be age group. It might be a podium. It might be, again, a best time for you. It might be just finishing something big like a Leadville or a big gravel race or something.
Yeah. But I think having a definition of that before you go into it is super important because the other thing we've seen is no matter how good someone does, like there's always this like, oh, it should have gone better, or like, oh, that was the worst race. Like, but then when you actually look at it objectively, you're like, actually, that was a pretty good race. And I think a lot of the time,
often like one of the best that they've done. Yeah.
So to me, that's partially a definition issue where you never really defined what is going to make it a good race.
Yeah, which is tricky to do, right? It almost echoes to the like why question, which is it's just like nebulous to come up with those things sometimes. But I do think, you know, when you're thinking about placing, if that's accessible to you in this type of race, then that's one thing, right? And remembering like what is your previous best, if that's relevant. Certainly, you know, more of like a XCO, a cyclocross thing where if you get into where like it's pretty consistent, who you're racing and the scenario. So you're like, I'm always fourth place, right? You know, and then it's like, okay, well, podium seems like a logical thing to try and like aspire towards, and then trying to pick away at why you're not in that group, right? So it might be you're not getting into the group to start off with. You're maybe blowing off the back of the group, you know, so maybe you could be smarter tactically or work on your engine, like get a little fitter. You know, maybe there's something mechanically that would help you stay in the group too. There's all these different factors that might contribute, but you're trying to think like incrementally more, but knowing that like you might not get that every single time too, right? It might take a while to get that incremental gain.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's sort of this idea of, you know, I guess we're beating around the SMART goals as always, right? Where it's sort of, you know, it's specific to you, it's measurable. You know, again, the measurable thing is sometimes what's tricky for people. Again, sort of this like, you know, first place is measurable, but, you know, if you're just a mid-pack person and that's your winning is, you know, mid-pack, and so we're going with finishing the race, we're going on maybe times at the event, you know, and again, maybe some feeling based things, which are a little more, you know, nebulous, where, you know, how did I feel during the race? Did I feel like I had energy in the last half, you know, or was I surviving? Right. And that can be a big flip for people. And that is honestly just figuring out the fueling thing, which is not easy, but it's also like very controllable in most situations. Right.
Yeah. And then after that, we have achievable, which I think is actually the really like important
Sort of
one that we were alluding to before.
About, right? Like you're not going to beat Nino or whoever like your local Nino is, right? Like you may, if you've never been in the podium, you know, you're probably not going to get a win likely, you know, unless again, like those stars align and someone goes from 20th to first, this happens. But yeah, that achievable thing is trying to think like, what have you done? Give her your past average. What would you bet on, and what is the next logical step?
And I think this is where, you know, self-development and manifestation and visualization and stuff kind of all fail us a little bit here, because like the flip side of that is the like, believe that the impossible is possible, or like you can do anything, and all of that. And it's like, oh, yes, that's all technically true, but like realistically, what's happening tomorrow?
And I love, you know, thinking that there is random chance both ways, right? So something could just randomly fall off your bike, and sometimes this happens, right? Like stuff fails. You know, the skies could open up as they did this weekend, and you can't even finish 6 hours of a 24-hour bike race, and that wasn't your fault. That's just random chance. Like there were literally, like, I guess you could just keep riding in the forest on your own for, you know, and just be that.
I think they would have tackled you off the course.
But like again, the event ended, right? Someone said stop riding, so it's done. But then on the other side, like it could go completely the other way. Again, because you could be just a great mudding, like a rider who rides really well in the mud, but it could also be dry conditions that you really thrive in, or again, just something could go really, really into your favor that way. And we have that random undulation, both sides of your average, right? That's again what makes the average.
But if you don't hit that,
right,
like you can, there's still a goal for you.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like all these, you know, again, how did you feel? The more process goals, I think, is where we always come back to, and then keep aspiring to something in that. You know, again, a lot of people, it's just I keep saying just for a lot of people, it is the finishing of the race that's going to be the goal. The completion goal is a big part of that, and then within that, it might be a bit of an age group goal. It might be racing whoever, and a lot of times that's my stuff too. Is, you know, I don't even, the result sort of takes care of itself. Well, it seems like now I'm into this fourth pattern in the local gravel stuff, which is great.
I mean, it's actually fantastic, because then if they do the podium
We've
late,
decided, as a masters athlete, I've realized that the key, the winning for me is actually fourth, because I get to go home hours earlier. You know, you thank everyone, you shake some hands, you get your burger, and then you go home. It's great. Versus having to stay around. There's not even prize money anymore, right? So you don't even want to be on the podium. So it is, again, it's setting your goals, really. So what are you trying to achieve in life and in sport?
I like that we're retrospectively setting your fourth place goal.
Well, yeah, you just own it, I guess, right? And that's it. I mean, the second one, I went into it thinking that fourth would be a great idea. And actually, I was lucky. I don't know how I ended up fourth. Was very fortunate in that second one. But again, a lot of it, we talked about self-talk, where it was so fast, and then I blew up pretty hard, and then I had to, you know, get back on it, keep fueling, remind myself that it's okay to keep eating even though I got dropped, like, you know, keep, again, how fast can you get to the finish line? And then two guys came backwards, and I ended up in fourth, and it was great. yeah, you just never know what's going to happen. And you think that everyone's so fast, but everyone is hurting really bad. It just sometimes their hurting unravels in different, ways.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about that is like that actually almost gets into like outcome versus process, where like the outcome was like, oh, I want to get fourth place. That would be awesome. But the process goal is like, I'm going to keep going regardless of what's happening in the race. Like, I'm going to keep eating.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep pedaling.
Like, until they say this 24-hour bike race has been canceled at 6 hours or you've been lapped, I think this is fine too. A lot of people get mad about when they're lapped, but again, these often if you get pulled in like an 80%, it usually means that the people you're racing are very, very good. And so you're aspiring to this like big high level event. And so it's not that you quit, it's just that that's when the race ended, right? And they just sort of like fast forward the race and end it. And that's just the nature of the racing year. And so I don't ever view getting lapped as like necessarily a failure, but it is tough, right? And it does end it.
But as long as you were going as hard as you could until the point someone told you to not keep going anymore.
Right. Which then sometimes people learn, okay, like I actually do need to go harder earlier. And that's almost like a breakthrough sometimes in its own, is that like, oh, I see some of these short races or even that gravel race we're talking about. Yeah, it's pretty irrational for the first little bit. And then, you hope it settles in and you can recover. And you just need to know sort of how the game works, right? And it's just a game. And if you think about racing as a game that you're playing in the same way you would play cards, and you learn the rules and the tricks of the card game, that's all bike racing or running is like figuring out all the pieces and how you can best play your own advantages and attributes. Yeah
I do think the nice thing with ultra anything is like it really does take away the what other people are doing element a little bit. Like for me, thinking about 100 miles, it just kind of occurred to me, I'm like, there's really nothing that anyone else on the course can be doing that is going to like cause me to have like any kind of real reaction. Like, I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure if someone like blows by me, it's going to be very upsetting and like take me down for a minute.
Yeah, you see less of like the women's Unbound finish this year, where it was 11 women. They all started together, and for 200 miles they raced. And the drafting element and it was a very fast year too, right? So it sort of was this perfect storm that wasn't a storm, I guess, the lack of a storm, that let them all finish in like a sprint, which was super exciting and neat. But I don't know that you'd see that as much in running. You'd maybe increasingly you'll see 2 people, 3 people just like going at it for 100 miles.
I think sometimes, yeah. But I think like when you're talking about 100 miles and like 20 hours of racing or however many hours, like there's just only so much you can do that's competing with the person next to you, right? So much as like you're competing with your physiology.
And I think in running, especially, you see more like maybe someone's running together for a bit, but then the climb comes and this person climbs faster, and then the other person goes downhill faster, and then the next like the aid station, like the person goes by, and so like you're seeing the person over the course of hours, but it's not nearly the toe to toe type scenario. Yeah, which is exciting too, and that's a bit of a head game where at least there's the back and forth. I often tell, especially younger athletes, that our strategy is always to go around the person. And that's like in the game, we try and get around, because often when you go around someone, they give up because they think they bonked because you went around them. And especially younger, less experienced athletes,
for sure.
It's just completely a head game, but it's part of the game, right? It's not illegal. You're allowed to go by people and pass them. And you're just testing to see, how strong are you mentally? Like, do you understand how the game works? And often people don't. They're like, I give up, and they have to leave space because they're not good at following. There could be a technical element, or again, sort of the psychological warfare, I guess, that I'm teaching young children.
Yeah. Now, when I talked to a group of NICA girls back in January, that was something I was telling them, these 15-year-olds, and I'm like, as soon as you see someone and you think you can pass them, you pass them as hard as you can, but you do it with a smile on your face. Right. You casually say hello. Right. You do everything in your power to look as comfortable as possible going by them, even if you have to be gasping for air afterwards. It's like, this is how you annihilate your component. And I'm like, oh, sorry, you're 15.
So we're talking about, we were on relevant out of our SMART.
Yes.
SMART goals. The relevant piece, we were talking about, sometimes people line up at races and it's like interesting because it's like, are they lining up at the front because they think they're going to be anywhere near the front?
So this is like obviously a mass start situation versus like
where you're self-selecting, where you're going to start. And again, this gets into, if you start really close to the front, you would expect that that's going to be the people often who are going to go. But then I think you maybe get tied up in, going too hard potentially. or crashes as people try and get around you. But it's often, I think, those people, I wonder if some of them, at least, have like expectations that are not reality, right? And do those people then, quickly in the race, they realize they are not in the top 5, 10, 20 people? Or was it just they thought they were going to get an advantage by being on the front line? There's maybe a bit of both. I don't know if either's true.
I was going to say, I think in some master races, especially races where there are a lot of like new riders, I do think there is a like, ooh, if I'm at the front, it's going to be less scary. Unfortunately, that tends to not be the case because then you have a lot of people buzzing past you. In that case, like if you're nervous about the race, go to the back. Like it's way chiller back there. It's great.
Well, the back, or a few rows back, like there's probably an advantage, and then there's I don't know, it's sort of weird. But that's where I was sort of thinking about that at the 24 hours is like, is there expectation that they're going to be in the top 10 of this group? Like, is that, I don't know. And if you don't have knowledge about the event and the game, then it's harder to know, like, no, like that's not realistic.
Now, flip side, I think, I'm going to say women in particular, we tend to self-select ourselves like further back. Like you've had to yell at me quite a few times to not be like huddled, 10 rows back at a running race.
Sure. And that's, again, sometimes you need to believe a little bit more and get in there. And there are, again, tactics. But yeah, if you find you go off you almost have to do it a couple times and see what happens to try and get that like bit of self-selection of how things go. Right. And every, especially mass races, is going to be different like that. But I just, on the front line, I'm always like, is the expectation, you don't need to be super high up. Like you're trying to avoid crashes and stuff. So there is like a bit of an advantage, but it is weird when you just get passed instantly right off the bat. But
I think that's way more dangerous, to be honest. Like I think your odds of getting crashed out as people are passing you in like the heat of the moment in a start, I think you're way more likely to get crashed.
Yeah, versus being second or third wheel and just like picking, just looking like who, maybe the person and then you can just be on that fast wheel, like rolling off the start line would be probably a good strategy. So anyhow, relevant.
And then I think on the broader scale of relevant, relevant means that the specific race goal lines up with sort of your long-term objective. And this is actually a super interesting one. It's funny, our good friend Ruby, actually, she tends to send me her favorite quotes from you from every episode.
Oh.
And her favorite from last week was you just saying completely monotone, like, you're probably not a professional cyclist. Or something to that effect. And, she's laughing at it. I'm like, yeah, but you wouldn't believe how many people, if you really like dig down, kind of believe.
Well, that's, I guess, what I'm asking. And I guess this is like achievable we're on actually here then, but I guess relevant.
No, I think relevant is like, if you think like you're winning the race, like,
right.
And, Ben Perry's on the start line, or PFP is on the start line, Marion Voss is on the start line, and you think you're winning there. Like, is that actually a goal that makes sense with your long-term objective? Is your long-term objective to be a professional cyclist, or is it to be, in my case, like a publisher and a writer, and, this, and this?
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you run into maybe problems where someone's maybe been like, in a smaller pond, maybe they are, quite good. Usually those things, cross over depending on the event a little bit, right? Where you would be able to get yourself into that lead group if you can win like a local weekly race or something. But yeah, it's tricky, right? To know that where you line up there and that achievable. And again, I think that like once you collect some data, at first we say complete before you compete. So collect some data about what is like an average race for you, right? Like you've done 3, what was the average result, right? And again, thinking a bit more objective or like a mathematician, where do you end up in a bike race? And it almost doesn't matter the type of bike race. This is the interesting thing about most types of racing. Track racing might be a little different, but once you get out to something that's like maybe 20 minutes out to very long, right? You'll usually see pretty similar results. Like look at the short track results for mountain biking versus the 90-minute cross country, right? It's not a lot different.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the other thing that's relevant though is it goes to like less objective, more like your internal motivations. Mm-hmm. So I think this is we see a lot of this in the winter or the fall, even like where you have cyclists who are then either like doing a run race or a cross country ski race, and it's not like, yes, they might be able to do it, and that's great. We love cross training. But wanting to win it, or like feeling bad if they don't win it, but they normally win their, local bike races.
Sure. Yeah. So it's not that you couldn't. I like those carrots of like there's something in February or something, but yeah, it shouldn't be. That's a C race, so like it's not. You go in and you try your hardest, but especially if it's not in your main sport, like you go back to complete before you compete, which I think is just you always remind yourself like which side of that equation am I on, and a lot of us are more on the complete, and it could go great, right? Like still do everything you know how to do already, and like work hard and prepare properly, and you might surprise yourself. But a lot of us are on the complete, because we're trying different disciplines. We're newer to sport, or this race is just going to be super hard to finish. I would say even some of the gravel stuff, I'm like just happy I finished sometimes because it's so much longer than what I usually even train. But I thought the relevant thing, to your point about goal setting and maybe a bit about values, a lot of us, our goal is to stay in the sport when we think about this, right? So not to make it miserable. It should be fun. It should be challenging. So, doing things that make it more challenging. Some people, this is why they go to do single speed eventually. Like they've raced for a lot of years. They maybe were at the front. Now they have kids and job and they can't be at the front anymore. So now they try single speed, or you see the people riding fat bikes at these events, or you'll see people ride mountain bikes at these events, or you'll see, I went and did a gravel race and then the mountain bike O Cup. And it's like, yeah, it's just sort of like an interesting challenge. And it's like, oh, how will I do when I'm really tired at the mountain bike race on Saturday? And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to win now, but the goal wasn't to win. The goal was to just get in there and race and, have fun and make it a little challenging. And, I had a good duel, I think, for fourth. Also in that race. Was I fourth in that race, or no, I ended up in third. Yeah, late race paced back in. So it's just good racing on the course, good experience and fun. And the idea, like a lot of us are in this, to try and stay in it for the long term for, health and social benefit. So it's trying to think like, how do I make this like a little intriguing or challenging for myself on top of, and sometimes those are games like within the game that you're playing with yourself, right? Can I be in the lead group, that's my only goal, a little bit of a like race goal. Can I be in the lead group on the end of the first lap? Or can I, it could be fueling. We keep coming back to that, but it could be, I really like hitting jumps during the race. So for me, that's like something like how big can I go during the race and not crash and fall over? I always like to wheelie on the finish line. But sometimes I screw up the wheelie at the end. So then I have to go practice for the next like month to get a better wheelie. I don't know. What else do people do? Like there's, people take pictures, we mentioned riding different bikes. What else do people do to make it sort of interesting? I guess trying different races even, right? Like we'll get into these ruts where, we almost need to force ourselves back to the complete phase. If we're getting too into the competing and finding the competing, like we've sort of figured out our average race and you're not really making that progress, the next step, like you're almost not there. Sometimes that is where it's like you need to go back to finding something fresh and to complete, right, where it's going to be challenging. And that's, I think, why a lot of people end up with longer and longer races. But it certainly could just be a different course or a slightly different style of racing, or in some cases it's a different sport. That's why we see people going between running and biking and triathlon and obstacle course racing. Like there's all this crossover too. So a lot of us, if you're not the World Cup winner, you do have the freedom to go and try different types of sports and events and distances too.
I think that's funny. I think a lot of people are locked into calendars kind of year over year over year within the same discipline, and never think about trying different ones, which obviously is why we kind of started this whole podcast and the original concept.
Sure. And I mean, that's, we talk a lot about ourselves here, which, there are examples we can give you without giving people's identity,
I was going to say, we can give like the most embarrassing examples.
And so I found this year with gravel, it's not that I haven't done a gravel race before or a road race, but the gravel racing is very much like a road race, and it's like tactical and it's so hard, it like points in it. And yeah, it's just different than mountain biking. So I found that, but now I think I'm actually like my mountain biking is getting better because I'm being much more patient and tactical, which again, like I wish 20 years ago I was not such a dummy. But again, this is where it's sort of fun because I can now get better performances in mountain biking without necessarily being fitter, just being smarter, which is fun, right? And it's like, oh, I went and did some other stuff and then came back to the one I still like. And it's like, oh, this is like a trick I can throw here too.
Okay,
Cool.
I think last thing on here in terms of SMART goals is the time-bound thing, which, I mean, fairly obvious if you're a racer, there are races on the calendar that kind of sets your time boundedness.
Well, and I think for a lot of us, again, our reason is that we want to stay fit. We want to push our limits. You know, there's something there, like whether it's longevity or health or whatever. But I think we enter these events, we put them on the calendar. This is our race if you're going to race. And we say, like, in July, I'm going to go to this nationals. In August, you're going to go to Leadville. And yeah, you keep it, you know, it's coming, and you don't want to show up there not prepared, right? We're going to feel like we could have done more. That's normal to feel like, especially as adults, right? You're never going to have unlimited time. But even pros are going to be like, oh, I wish I did a bit more of this, or oh, I could have ridden in the mud, but now it's muddy and I never trained in the mud. Like, that's, I think, normal to have that. But you want to do your training, right? Like, you want to do the stuff you laid out and motivate that day to day. And I think that's a lot of us, the time bound piece comes in because it puts like a thing on, like a stake in the ground when you're going to show up with whatever you have and you're going to try your best. And so I think that's important for sure. So I think that's probably implicit in the clientele and the listenership here, in that, like, we're entering events, but sometimes we forget, right? As we get into our certainly 50s and 60s, it's easy to just not have these, you know, I'm done with racing, which I get it, right? And maybe you don't, but this could still be a big group ride you're going, or a big ride away. You know, a lot of the clubs will do like a 200K day, or they'll do a remote ride, or you could enter a fondo, or there's so many things you could enter where there's a bit of a performance social element, again, a complete element that's a little scary, a little new to it. You know, this could be a ride for, if you're in that 60s age group, it could just be like a ride on your own, which makes it a little scary, to the cottage, or to, you know, some place where your family's going on holiday, right? It could just be a big ride like that.
Yeah, just having a couple things on the calendar in whatever aspect.
Yeah, like a test date, right? Like it's the same as school, right? Your exams are coming. You need to do the best you can on this date by some point, right? So to try and motivate that, because if you didn't, right, it would be just hard to try and push yourself to get a little better, or even to maintain that average, right? And sometimes, you know, we talk about it like in passing, this average, this regression to the mean, but holding on to that average is also pretty good, right? Like, at some point you've reached you're experienced, you've done the complete, and then to compete at that average is actually like challenging, and it seems like demoralizing because you're not getting better. Like, we keep talking about the next step, but again, it's better qualitatively. But if you look at, again, we keep using Nino as the example, but only because he's won whatever number of World Cups, and his win percentage, what did they say it was? It was actually like really impressively high, like 75% of the World Cups he's entered, he's won, or something like that.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but it was like surprising. It was better than Roger Federer, we'll say that. But although I actually don't know if it was actually better than Roger Federer. So in any case, they were both impressive. And Serena Williams is similar too. I was just reading about her a lot yesterday too, and for another tennis example. But I think her win streak was amazing, right? They kept in the article, they kept holding out that she didn't get the actual record though, I guess, for like, there's a woman, I guess, who had won more total matches. This is, again, my tennis. I don't know why I chose tennis examples.
Yeah, I don't know why you're going down this road.
There you go. There was stuff left to be done, right? It's like she's the most, you know, prolific tennis player, if not like athlete of that era. And then again, there was things she could have done better, and even in her own description, right? But it's like you have to sort of let that go at some point. But all that to say, Nino, to keep winning, you know, objectively saying like first place, he can't do really better than that. But, you know, can he race more tactically? Can he do qualitatively like a better race?
Well, and certainly for him, it is, can he keep winning?
Yeah, because again,
as he's getting older every year,
like potentially half his age, right? Yeah, or close to. So, yeah, you know, we hold on to that, and that can be inspiring for a while, and then at some point he's not going to win, right? And then it's like, well, is he going to keep racing for 10th, or is that about when it's done? And either answer is okay, right? And then you might see him do something completely different or similar. You know, he goes and does something longer or whatever, right? Maybe he has a gravel phase.
And if he wants to write in with a question for the Consummate Athlete podcast.
Yeah, you know, how do you handle this?
No, he wants to know from you how he should handle it.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should probably wrap it up there. I will just give one quick plug, though. I have a book with Misha Powell, Olympian track sprinter out of Canada, coming out actually next Monday. So
This is like July 1st.
July 1st, yeah. So this is actually like before our next podcast. And I just wanted to point it out because it is called Sprinting Through Setbacks. And there's a ton in there about goal setting and about, when a race doesn't go your way, even from like the professional athlete standpoint, because again, like spoiler alert, not every race is going to go your way. And what we didn't get into earlier, we keep talking about ultra endurance, but like, oh my gosh, when you're talking process and outcome for someone whose race is under a minute long, they can't be thinking about the outcome. Like they can only really be focused on the process.
And I think it's something, the track stuff, running or cycling, is so time bound. Every rep is timed, right? And so you would know that, same as baseball or tennis, where it's like yes or no, like did you go faster? And often the answer is you didn't go faster.
Exactly.
Right? Or baseball again is similar, where it's like 300 is like a good hitting average, but that means, I think that means like you're hitting a third of the time you're at the bat.
No, I mean, Misha set her PR in the 400 in 2016. 8 years she's been chasing that PR,
right,
and has not hit it again. Like that's wild when you like you can't rely on outcome goals when that's the space you're in. And like that's not a shocking story. That's a lot of track athletes.
Sure. And that could have been like just the stars aligned with conditions like weather, altitude, everything, right? And not to the least of her like physiology and the timing of all that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like if you just continually are chasing outcome goals in a sport like track, you are going to be so disappointed so often. So you have to have these like serious process goals. And I think to me, that's really how every athlete should be looking at it, where the outcome goals are really the result of the process goals, but aren't the thing. The process goals are the thing. The outcome goals are sort of the cherry on top.
Right. And again, just not dwelling on a lot of it too much, right? Like what can you take from it and then back into the grind, into the routine, right into the process.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's anyone that's great at that, it is Misha. Highly, highly recommend this book.
Then you said we'll have her onto the show as well.
We will have her on, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I think with that, we will wrap it up. We have a bunch of questions in the hopper, but always want to hear more from you.
Let's hear some fresh questions in here. And let's do that for the next one for sure.
Yeah. Hit us up over at Consummate Athlete or consummateathlete.com. We have a great new contact page, so check us out there. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you and happy training. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.